I
fun.
couldn't stop learning it since it came in.
She went through the whole thing already.
Wow, yeah.
I'm not sure. What's the point of the gift? What's the point of the gift? You like every Shabbos you do a different one?
Yeah, I love every Shabbos.
It's every day of the week.
No, every Shabbos. I think every Sukkah they said or something. Every Sukkah.
Oh, it said something? Yeah.
My kids are saying, he lives on the first lot, that's why.
Rabbi Weiss.
He's pumped. He knows better than me. Yeah,
Good, good. All right, we're on the Chaf, Zayin and Beis on the bottom, by where it says B'tiv Shalei Mididei, second last line, beginning of the line. So just the Chazer, the Gemara wanted to know. Rabbi Eliezer says he never says anything without his Rebbe saying it. So the question is, Rabbi Eliezer says something very similar. I know it's not the exact same thing as the sheet on the sukkah. He says something very similar about a pekaka chaloin. So why couldn't he have been Peshat the Shaila from what he said in a different place, which probably was the name of his Rebbe? So the Gemara asks, "V'tim shalei mididei," let him be Peshat from himself. This now we learned in the Mishnah, pekaka chaloin, this shutter of a skylight. Rabbi Eliezer Eimer, bizman shekasher b'toli, peikikim bai. If the piece that you shutter the window, if the piece is hanging, suspended in the air, it's tied on, and this is something you constantly do, you close the window like that, then you could be pikik in it, because it's not a real haisafa, it's something that you're constantly doing, it's just like in and out, it's not like a mamish making an addition, it's very arayish, it's something that you're allowed to do. But if not, ain't pikik in boy. But if it's not suspended and hanging there, to go take something from your house and put it there and close it up, that's really being moisef, even though it could be it's arai, but it's more of a hisafa, and therefore it's not allowed. The Chacham say no, either way, you can always be paikik, it's all a hisafa, that's an arai, and therefore it's okay. But you see from Rebbe Eliezer, should be also very similar to this case in Shabbos. The Gemara answers, Hossam over there by the Pekaka Chalon in Shabbos, Hu de Mevato. He's nullifying it to the roof of his house. So it's much more, it's a lot more viewed as making an oil, as making a real safa. You need a lot more to make it mutter. You have kasher v'toli. That's when Rebbe Eliezer says you need it. But by the sheet, the loimavati, he's not nullifying it to the sukkah. He's probably taking it down, a few seconds later, once the sun passes. Then loy, maybe not. Maybe Rebbe Eliezer would say it's always mutter, even if it's not kasher v'toli. You can always take a random sheet and throw it on for a couple of seconds. It's so arayish, it's not viewed as a hisafa on the oil. Fine. Says the Gemara Tana Rabban taught in the Brisa. Ma'aseh Rebbe Eliezer b'Shabbos b'Galil Elyon. There's a story of Rebbe Eliezer that he was spending Shabbos in the Upper Galil. V'shalu shloishim halachas b'Hilchos Sukkah. They asked him 30 shilas in Hilchos Sukkah. 30 different shilas. Shteim esei amar lehem. For 12 of them he said, Shemati. I heard it from my Rebbeim, I'll tell you the answer. Shemene esei amar lehem. For 18 of them, lo shemati. He said, I don't know, I didn't hear from my Rebbe, I didn't hear anything.
Answer that last time when he asked him why the question.
Yeah.
He's on it. Or
Right.
you want to say it.
Here he says, lo shemati.
So I have to give him
I guess because it's like an official Q&A, like he's not going to, start saying Divrei Agadata for all 30. Here was like him and
It's very
Yochanan.
interesting why he pushed it away.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Yehuda says, Chilaf Advarim. It was actually the opposite of what you said. Shemana Esrei Amar Lehem, 18 of them he said, Shemati, I heard it from my Rebbe. And he said the answer. Shtem Esrei, for 12 of them, Amar Lehem, he said to them, Lo Shemati. I did not hear from my Rebbe, and I'm not telling you an answer. Amar Lehem, they said to him, Kol Devarecha, Einen Elo Mipi Hashmua. All your words, they're only from the mouth, from something you heard Mipi Hashmua, from the mouth of hearing it from your Rebbe. You can't say something from your own. Amar Lehem, he said to them, Hiskaktuni loimer davar shlei shemati mipi rabbeisai. You're forcing me to say something I didn't hear from my Rebbeim? Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Trust me, if my Rebbe said anything about it, I know. But I'm knowing certain special things. Miyamai, from all my days, lo kidmani adam beveis hamedrash. Nobody ever beat me to the beis medrash. V'lo yishanti beveis hamedrash lo yishenes kevav lo yishenes arei. I never slept in the beis medrash, a fixed sleep, a nap, nothing. I never left anyone in the Beis Medrash and left. I was always the last one there. I never schmoozed non-holy speech. And I never said anything I didn't hear from my Rebbe, ever. So this is my thing. This is what I'm makbid about. This is one of my midas, and I'm not changing. And I'm just letting you know, why did he choose these things to say? Because trust me, if my Rebbe said it, I guarantee you I would have known it. I never left the Beis Medrash. I never battled. I would have known. So if I didn't hear it, I really didn't hear it. I don't know it, and I'm not saying it anyways. Okay, the Brisa goes on to talk about Rebbe Eliezer's Rebbe right now. And this is not Rebbe ben Zakkai talking, this is a Brisa saying about what they said about him. Amru Olav al Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. They said about him, about Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai, and this is what we got up to yesterday. Miyamav, for all his days, leisach sichas chulin. He never schmoozed unholy speech. Never. V'leholach dalad amas b'lei Torah b'lei tefillin. He never walked 4 amas without Torah or without tefillin. V'lei kodmu adam b'veis hamedrash. Nobody ever beat him to the Beis Medrash. V'lo yoshein b'veis hamedrash loishen es keva v'loishen es aray. He never slept in the Beis Medrash, a fixed sleep or a temporary sleep. V'lo yihir b'mavayis hamutunafes. He never thought in learning in unclean alleyways. Mavayis are alleyways, mutunafes are dirty. That's a halacha. That's something that he was very careful about, even though it's halacha. So some of these things are ikra adin, but still, he never ever was over on this.
I saw somewhere that something that's so right that are learning.
It's an einus.
No, it makes it more like, it's all build up.
Right.
Never spoke. Only thing you know was Torah.
And still, everything Shmuel is saying, he's going through all these things. You can imagine for him not to think in learning. He can walk down
I'll see one in the bathroom, okay.
Right.
But not the rock.
Is that your phone there?
In the bathroom, no. No. Mavayis Mutunafis is not allowed to. Yeah.
So you either had tefillin or you walk.
So I guess Mavayis Mutunafis, not. You wouldn't be able to walk. Yeah. There's got an Indian to walk with your tefillin to shul and from your house, talis and tefillin. But if you're going to have to go past Mavayis and Mutunafis, you're not allowed to. Yeah. He walked from his house?
Yeah, he still does.
In Flatbush?
No, Kensington.
In Kensington. How far is his walk? Yeah, there's no Mavayis.
Mavais.
Yeah, Flatbush, there's no Mavayis Mutunafis. It's like back then where there were like dirty ashbas and some, it could be real tsoya and stuff.
I think Brooklyn nowadays, you won't think about it.
Mavayis Mutunafis. By the way, that's why the Mishabura brings down an Indian. He says it's an Indian gadol to put on your tefillin. Not the Beis Medrash. It's an Indian gadol. You don't have to do it. I think Reb David Feinstein's in his biography. They asked him about it. And he said, I don't think Reb Moshe did it. No. It's in his book. There are a lot of things that people do and don't do. You
don't have to.
Yeah. In yeshiva we did. In yeshiva, when I was growing up in yeshiva, we always put our tefillin in the ice. The yeshiva put his tefillin in the ice, and we came into Beis Medrash. It's an Indian gadol, Mishabura says. Yeah. It comes from this idea to go with your talis tefillin into the Beis Medrash. But because we can't walk on the streets, because Mavayis Mutunafis, people put in the Eitzer of the Beis Medrash. I think the Vilna Gaon also took off his tefillin outside. I think the Chaim Kanievsky brings down the Eichos Yosher to put your tefillin on outside and then to take them off also outside. But most people, that's from the Vilna Gaon. He never left anyone in the Beis Medrash and left. He was always the last guy. Nobody ever found him sitting v'dainim and being quiet. Ella, rather, he was yeshiv v'shein. He was always sitting and reviewing his learning. Now, we just said before he was always walking with Torah. So I'm assuming one of them is wherever he walked, anywhere he was sitting and learning. But even if he was sitting down, maybe he needed a break or he was tired, you'd think, okay, he'll probably be quiet for a second. No, even if he was sitting, he was yeshiv v'shein. He reviewed and constantly reviewed his learning. He didn't stop talking and learning. V'lei pasach adam deles l'talmidav elohu ba'atzmai. Nobody ever opened up the door for his talmidim besides for himself. He was makbid every single time he opened the door of the Beis Medrash for him. Why? They say because no one should feel bad. He opened the door for every single talmid. No talmid ever walked in without him opening up the door for him. Okay?
But Israel says that because he was the earliest.
And because he was the earliest, that's right. That was what you were saying yesterday.
Yeah, he was mashkin after. Also,
Bechim ben Zakkai, they say about him, he never said anything he didn't hear from his Rebbe forever. Okay, another thing. He never said, the time has come to get up for the Beis Medrash. It's over. Night Seder is over. First Seder is over. He never said that. He always said, keep on going, keep on learning. Chutz, besides for 2 times a year. Besides, me arvei psachim ve'arvei yom kippurim. Erev Pesach and Erev Yom Kippur, he said, tell the Olam, shut your Gemaras and walk out. Why? Because Erev Pesach, you want to make sure to start your Seder as early as possible. Why? So the kids who are supposed to be shayol and be involved in the Seder, you want them to be up. You want to have a late Ma'ariv on Pesach night. You want to have an early start. Some say also to make sure his kids took a nap during the day. Different pshatim. But he was makbid. And Erev Yom Kippur to make sure that he ate, and people ate before the fast, to make sure that everyone was eating and had enough time to eat. And it's a mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. If someone eats on Erev Yom Kippur, it's like he fasts 2 times. Chiva Asiru.
Why says Hanukkah not?
Yes, Hanukkah, no. Hanukkah, there's no Mesilah. Yeah. You're always better off staying and learning, no matter what. But, so these were all Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai's things. But guess how the Brisa ends off? V'chein hoya Rebbe Eliezer talmidoi noeg acharav. So too did Rebbe Eliezer, his Talmud. He was noeg everything that we just said also after him. So Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Yechim ben Zakkai, they did everything the same. Rebbe Eliezer also followed everything as Rebbe said. So why earlier in the Brisa he said only these things? So we could say pshat that there he was referring to why he only said things from his, like they were questioning him. Maybe you missed something in Shir that day. Maybe you weren't around. So all these things he said about himself were things. I was in the base manager all the time. I never left early. I wasn't batal. I'm not going to start saying that I never went without my
It wasn't T4.
What?
It wasn't a T4. It was Taka.
Right. He wasn't T4. And he was saying why you guys shouldn't think. I didn't hear my rabbi say it. This is not Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai talking. This is the Velt said about Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai. And Rabbi Eliezer also followed after. Very nice. Okay, another Gishmak of Brisa. Listen to this. Tanu Rabbanan taught in the Brisa. Shmoinim Talmidim Hayuloi LeHillel Hazakin. Hillel Hazakin, this is the famous Hillel and Shammai. The famous Hillel, usually most times in Shas, it's Hillel. This one, the one that has the good midas and who's patient, the famous Hillel. And Hillel was a Nasi, and for 400 years, every Nasi in Eretz Yisrael came from the house of Hillel, from his family. That was Hillel. He argued with Shammai, and he lived before and after the Churban. Hillel. It's called Hillel Hazakin. He had 80 Talmidim. Listen to this. Shloishim mehen, 30 of them, Ru'uyim shetishra alein shchina k'Moshe Rabbeinu. 30 of them were roy, they were fitting that the Shechina should rest on them like Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Now it didn't happen because the door was full of Averis and the Shechina doesn't rest on people anymore. But they were roy, because if they'd been in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, they also would have had the Shechina. Now it doesn't mean they would have had the Vul like Moshe Rabbeinu. Nobody ever was a Navi like Moshe, but the Shechina would rest on them. Certain Kedusha, the top 30, they were like that. Ushloisha 30 of them, Ru'uyim shetamid lehem chama ki Yeshua benon. 30 of them were roy, they were fitting, that the sun should stop for them like Yeshua benon. We learned here in the Navi Shir, that when Yeshua was fighting a battle, by the war with the Gevonim, he was saving the Gevonim from all the kings of the south of Eretz Yisrael. Yeshua said, Shemesh begivain doim, v'yareach be'imekal ayoloi, that the sun should stop, stay still, and the moon. And the sun stopped still, which is a huge nace. And it was really Yeshua's one that set Hashem to do it, and Hashem listened to him. 30 of his Talmidim, they were fitting that they could have the sun stop for them as well. Like Yeshua ben Nun. Now it happens to be, Moshe Rabbeinu also stopped the sun. In last week's parsha, Chazal say by Parshas B'Shalach, when Moshe was fighting the battle, Yeshua was fighting, but Moshe was up there. With Amalek, Moshe also stopped the sun. But it means they weren't as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. They're as great as Yeshua ben Nun, who stopped the sun. And that one's not before Shem Sukkim, this one is. So we refer to Yeshua ben Nun. So there was 30 that were like Moshe, 30 that were like Yeshua on some level, Esrim Beinanim, and 20 were in the middle. So there's the top 30, they're like similar to Moshe on some level. The bottom 30, they're like similar to Yeshua, and there were 20 in the middle, that's 80. Get ready for this. Gadol Shebekulam, the greatest of all his Talmidim, was Yonasan ben Uziel, Yonasan the son of Uziel. Katan Shebekulam, the shvachest, the smallest of all of them, was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who we said all these wonderful things about, he was Katan Shebekulam.
What do they call baby?
They were not the greatest, they were not the lowest, they're like in the middle. Not Geshmak to be the Beinanim, and 20 in the middle. Okay.
Who's the lowest?
The lowest was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai.
No, it says Shloshim were like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
Shloshim were like Shulchan.
20 in the middle.
20 in the middle of those two?
Yeah.
So the Yeshua Benum guys were the lower ones?
No, they were, they were the lowest.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And from the Yeshua Benum guys, Rechim and Zakkai was the lowest. Yeah, he's the lowest.
It's nice to do that, huh?
No, not so nice.
It's like-
Amru alav al Rabbi Yechim and Zakkai. They said about him, the Brisa continuing. They said about him, about Rabbi Yechim and Zakkai, Shelo mikra, he did not leave, like he knew every pasuk in Chumash and Tanakh. Like he didn't leave over any psukim. He knew everything in mikra, everything in Tanakh, fluent. He didn't leave any mikra. Mishnah, he knew all Mishnais and Brises of all the Shisha Sidei Mishnah. Talmud, he knew the entire Talmud. Now Talmud does not mean our Gemara, because he was a Tana, they didn't have Gemara. But Gemara is really just explaining the Mishnais. They also had Gemara back then, which is not what we call Gemara. They also had Mishnais, and they discussed what they were saying. Gemara just means the Tamim and realizing how what Pshat is and how everything makes sense. They also handled in learning about the Mishnais. It's not called our Gemara because the Gemara came later. But he knew all the reasons for the Mishnais, what Talmud represents. Halachas, he knew all halachas. And when we say halachas, we don't mean like Mishnah Berurah, Shulchan Aruch. We mean halacha l'meishim b'sinais, Gorasik, Deifin Akuma, all these interesting halacha l'meishim b'sinais, he knew them. V'agadas, he also knew every single medrash. Agadas are things you would like relate over. Agada, like medrashim and interesting things. Digduke Torah. Digduke means like the exactness of the Torah. He knew what every extra hay was for, what you darshan from an extra vav, what you darshan from this, from that. He was exacting in the Torah. He knew every single letter, what to darshan. Digduke Sefer. He was exacting, he was very exact in Sefer. What Sefer? Chazal, they used to always add on siyagim, different like derabanans, to make sure you don't do a deraisa. They're called Digduke Sefer because the Chazal, they're called Seferim, Rabbanon, they're very exact. Like, don't do muksa, even though muksa is not a malacha. Don't do this, don't do that. Like, certain things as a fence, you don't come to do something worse. See, even this Digduke Sefer, the exactness of what Chazal mandated, he knew every single one well. Kalim v'chamurim. He knew every single kal v'chamer, right? Kal light, chamer is stringent. All the drushes of kal v'chamers, he knew them. Gzera Shavas, he knew every single Gzera Shava. Tufas, he knew everything about the sun and the moon and all these types of things. The Kiddush Lavana, he was fluent in Tkufas. Tkufas means like astronomist type of thing. Astrology. No. Astronomy.
Astrology is a child.
Yeah, astrology is how it affects us.
Yeah, I believe in that.
The Gematrios. People think Gematrios is a Hasidic Azach. Gematrios is a real thing. Gematrios, it's Gematrios everywhere. The most famous one is that a Stam Nazir is 30 days. We learn that from a Gematria. Gematrios, Atbash, different forms of Gematrios. He knew every single one. Sichas Malachi Asharis. He knew what the Malachi Asharis, the Malachim were schmoozing about. The Sicha Shedim. He knew what Shedim were speaking about. The Sichas Dekolim. He knew the speech of palm trees. Now, what does that mean? He knew the speech of Malachim, speech of Shedim, speech of palm trees. Rashi says, I don't know what this means. Okay? Rashi says, I don't know. But some people say he means he knew about these things. Not that he knew their speech. He knew what Malachim talk about. He knew all about palm trees, not literally what palm trees speak about. But Rashi says, I don't know what it's referring to. Misholes kaivsin u'misholes shulim. He knew what misholes, like, what's a mashal in English? Like a parable. He knew all the parables of launderers and the parables of foxes. What does that mean? There was many ways how Chazal expressed themselves, different types of rebuke and lessons to be learned by using a mashal of foxes and launderers. He knew all of them, like all these famous things, like, I don't know, don't act like a fox in a foxhole. We learned from that. I don't know, like all these interesting, like, don't take a ride on a fox's back, whatever it was. He knew all the misholim of Chazal, of their parables. Davar gadol v'davar katan. He knew big things and small things. Keeps going. We'll stop over here. Still the Brisa keeps going. Unless we get to the Mishnah. Should we get to the Mishnah?
Yeah.
Fine, we'll get to the Mishnah. It's Agata. He knew every davar gadol, davar katan. Take a break in the Brisa. This is in parentheses. Says the Gemara, what's davar gadol? A big thing. What are big things? Maisa Merkava, about Hashem's chariot. There's a whole thing called Maisa, the workings of his chariot. It's in the beginning of Yechezkel. Very deep, esoteric matter. He knew all about Hashem's chariot. And what's davar katan? Something small. Havayas dabai v'rava. The back and forth of Abai and Rav and Gemaras. He knew all of it before Abai and Rava. He knew all of Abai's questions, all of Rava's answers. He knew everything that they were supik about. He knew. But through the course of time, people forgot about them until Abai and Rava were mechadish them again. But really, B'ech Mezakeh knew all this stuff before. End of parentheses. That's davar gadol, davar katan. And the Brisa ends off, l'kayim hashanemar. This fulfills what the pasuk says. The pasuk in Mishlei. Lahanchel oyava yesh, v'oitzesem amale. Lahanchel, to give a nachla, to give an inheritance to oyavai, those who love me, yesh, I have. Hashem says, those who love me, I have what to give them as an inheritance. Yesh, something, there is. There's an olam haba, something real that they're going to get. V'oitzesem amale, and I'll fill up their oitzes, their storehouses. These are the types of people that they're so full of Torah, I'm going to mamish give them an olam haba. These are the types of people. This is a fulfillment of what Hashem meant in this pasuk. People that have full storehouses of Torah, of mitzvahs, I'm going to give them a real nachla, yesh, that has a lot to it of olam haba. That is about that pasuk. The Brisa continues, if the smallest one of them, is so major, the greatest of them, Yenissim ben Uzziel, you can imagine how much more so Yenissim ben Uzziel was. Let me hear something about Yenissim ben Uzziel. Amru Love, they said about him, Al Yenissim ben Uzziel, about Yenissim ben Uzziel, at the time he was sitting and learning Torah, being Isaac in Torah, any bird that would fly over him, miyad nisaf, would immediately be burnt up. Boom, fell into flames. And the reason is because the malachim were so into his Torah. When he learned, all the malachim came over his head to hear what he was learning, and they're like fiery. So if a bird flew over, got burnt on the spot by the malachim that were over his head. These are great people. You have Yenissim ben Uzziel, Yevechem ben Zakkai. You see what these people were. Mamish.
So what's the middle ground now?
The Beinim. All we could do is one thing I ask from the Olam. One thing I ask. And I think you have it. Just you should recognize it and value it. You all have something that you're into. You do. You don't realize it. You think about it. You do. Whatever it is, keep it stark, and even come up with another one. Something that this is what I do. Every Yom Yom Kippur, by the way, good to find one new thing. It could be a small thing. This is my thing. Yeah, this is my thing. Shchach. Hamko Oyev Ayesh.
Shai Lomis.
Shai Lomis, right? 300 and.
I don't try to.
Wow.
Today's share was sponsored by Next Space. Thank
A
you.
little bit of both, yeah. You see him, and can you imagine?
I heard a joke once. Three healed in the Gemara. The last mother already said.